Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that the land we meet on today is on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and I pay my respect to their spiritual relationship with this country. I'd also like to acknowledge Pamela Martin, our Deputy Chancellor, Professor Christopher Finlay, the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Professions, and other university staff and distinguished guests.
I'd like to welcome you here today on behalf of the university, on behalf of my faculty and my colleagues in the Adelaide MBA program. Special welcome to our Deputy Chancellor, Pam Martin, to all our MBA graduates and staff, our current and our future MBA students, and Adelaide business leaders. You're here today to hear from one of the world's leading experts on business strategy, Cynthia Montgomery from the Harper Business School. We're very privileged to be able to host Cynthia here in her only public appearance in Australia. She is Timken Professor at the Harvard Business School, and she's immediate past head of the school's strategy unit. She's taught at Harvard for 20 years. Her programs have been attended by managers of companies of all sizes from around the globe, and including some of our own MBA graduates. They include, amongst others, Jim Wally from Nova Systems, who's a member of our advisory board, who unfortunately can't be here today, and also Anthony Cattell from Redark, who is here today and I believe has a connection with Damien. Cynthia is a top-selling author, and her book, The Strategist, Be the Leader Your Business Needs, offers real insights into what she's learned and what she's gleaned from years of experience in the classroom at Harvard. She'll discuss today what strategy is and why it matters and what it takes to lead. And incidentally, this book is available for you to purchase after the luncheon. A quick word about the university and the MBA program. We've got many links with universities across the globe, and it's a link of that type with the Harvard Business School that has enabled Professor Montgomery to come to Adelaide, and we're very grateful to have someone of her standing and her expertise to be here today and to share her thoughts with us. It's clear, I think, we're living in a world that's volatile, unexpected, complex, ambiguous, and I guess we can be sure that there's going to be more of all of those things. Our MBA program is designed to give graduates experience, practical experience, insights to meet those challenges and turn them into opportunities. There's no better way for people to get these insights than to hear firsthand from those who are on the front line of changing global business management. Please join me in welcoming Professor Montgomery to address us today.
I'm really delighted to be here, and before we begin, I'd like to ask you a question. By the way, at Harvard Business School, we teach by the case method, and so what we can't stand is a polite audience. So I really need you out there, right? Because in the case method, it just dies without the people. So I need to hear from you, so I thought I'd start with a question. So, have you ever met anyone in your travels who is living in a place which is quite different from where they were born? And you ask them, hey, how did you get here? How did you come to live here? And they say, well, you know, I was on holiday, and I came here, and I just fell in love with the place. And I've been here for 20 years since. Have you ever met anybody like that? Yeah? Who? Let's see. Show of hands. All right, so you there in the white jacket. Right, the blonde hair. So let's be honest about this. What do you think when somebody says that? Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, right. What do you think about somebody who would conduct their life like that? Hey, I was on holiday and I liked it, so I just thought I would stay. I mean, don't you think that's weird? So, you know, I always just sort of would look at them askance and think, yeah, well, sure. But I have to tell you, this week, I get it. I really understand it. And I'm here with this group of people from 6 different continents. So we have 18 people, 6 different continents. And let me tell you a little bit about where we're from. We're from countries with huge, I know you guys are a big country, but I don't think you really understand about huge deficits, like gigantic deficits, right? We're from countries with very high levels of unemployment. We're from countries where kidnappings go on. We're from countries where political parties are warring in ways that are really unproductive and unpleasant. And then we come to Australia. And I have to tell you, the climate in the program this week is, wouldn't it be great to live here? So let me tell you, you're really fortunate to be here. I also wanted to mention that next month I'm speaking at Stanford University in California. And they asked me if I could send a bio and a short write-up on the book and what I'd be talking about and so on. And I started to send them something, and I thought, heck, why do that? Just send them what Damien put together. Because I've never seen anything as good as what he did. And so I just sent it off, and I said, well, I have this, it's from the University of Adelaide. And they wrote back and said, we have never seen a write-up this good. So I just want you to know that this is the Uni of Adelaide sending to the Uni at Stanford, and they're very grateful for your contribution. So, and my one advice to those who are leading the Adelaide Business School, from what I've heard about what's happening here, is that this is a gem. And the biggest mistake your leaders could make is not to think big enough and not to be bold enough. So I'm very grateful to be here and very excited about where you're going. So today we're talking about what does it mean to lead strategy. And I think it's the most important responsibility that a leader has for a business. Be that business an MBA program, be that business a hospital, be that business a multinational defense company. If you're a leader of a profit or a nonprofit organization, the most important thing you have to do is give that business a reason to matter. That's what I'm talking about today. And how did I come to understand this? It was working with managers like you, moving from theory to practice and really trying to understand what makes a company great. And so I want to start with where we were, how we thought about strategy. And I'll be honest with you, I was part of the problem. I'd been trained in a very technical way of looking at strategy, doing large sample statistical analysis, and looking for regularities across industries and across firms. And it was a heady day in strategy when analytics came in. But unfortunately, what happened was analytics drove out management, drove out people. And so to start with what analytics brought to us, and it's good stuff, but it's not the whole story. So what they did, if you think in the last 25 years for strategy, they said, what's the primary objective? What are you trying to do if you're leading a company and developing its strategy? You want to beat the competition. That's what it's all about, beat the competition. And we really got fixated on the competition. I said, what does it take to do this well? If you're putting together an MBA program and you're teaching strategy, what's in the curriculum? What's really important? And what's happened is that we've moved from strategy being the province of the president to being the bailiwick of the analyst. And we've trained umpteen consultants, but we've lost the role of leadership. So strategy became a left-brain analytical exercise. I think it's something more, and that's what we'll be talking about. And then we go on and say, and what's the goal? What really are you trying to achieve as a company or as a nonprofit organization? It's a long-run, sustainable competitive advantage. Have you heard that? Is that what you're trying to do? Right? A long-run, sustainable competitive advantage. Right? Okay, now, I'd like to see a show of hands, the people from the businesses in this community that have a long-run, sustainable competitive advantage. We've got one. Hey, that's never happened. All right. So we have a very distinguished fellow over here, right? But let's face it, he's a little bit odd, a little bit unusual. It doesn't happen very often. And if that's what you think you're going for, think again. Because it's, unless you're very, fortunate as our friend is here, it's very unlikely that that's going to be the story of your business or the story of your career as a leader. I think we need to think about this in a different way. And lastly, when does it happen? Strategy happens annually, on time, during the long-run strategic planning process. You get together, you don't laugh, you don't acknowledge any emotions, and you just do it. I don't think so. I think we've got to think about what does it mean to do this in a robust way, in a meaningful way, and what does it mean for a leader's life to be a strategist? So this is where we're starting from. It's not bad stuff, but it's only half the story. So what I want to talk about is the other half of the story, which, as I said, I learned from managers like you. So I think it's time to reimagine strategy, to really think about, I could say time to rebrand strategy, but even deeper to reimagine it, to really think about it in a much more vibrant way, a way that's much more connected with leadership. So to start, most people think that strategy is about beating the competition. I don't think so. If you're trying to beat the competition, what it's saying is I'm here, you're there, and I'm judging myself relative to how well I'm doing relative to you. Well, the first thing that happens there is we start looking alike. Our strategies tend to converge. And basically, you get to a situation of symmetry because you're judging yourself by other people who you're aping, you're imitating, you're trying to do what they're doing. I think what strategy is about is meeting an unmet need. It's about doing something unique or something uniquely well for some set of stakeholders. You've got to start with the customer. You have to really understand what the needs are of the customers you're serving or want to serve. Don't start with the competition. Start with the customer. And as you're starting with the customer, take some time out to contemplate death. And I really mean this. I was a philosophy major undergraduate, so I've thought a lot about death. And I don't want you to think about, your own death, your own personal death of you as an individual. I want you to think about the death of your organization. So Damien, that means the death of this business school, right? It means that, think about going back to your company. These guys can help you. Here they are. This is what you find. Look at those teeth. This is what's there when you get back, right? And what's happened, those business cards you have, toss them out. They're history. They're auctioning off your desk when you return, right? It's just not there. The world, Adelaide, the world, has lost your business. And by thinking about that, you can begin to think about what it means to have your business in the world. Who does it matter to, and why? So basically, the Buddhists tell you that as individuals, it's really good to think about death, because if you think about death, you can live better. And I think as business leaders, you really have to think about your business in really fundamental terms. Like, why does the world need your business? What would it be like without it? So that gets you to purpose. What is the purpose of your business? And John Brown said, purpose is who we are and what makes us distinctive. It's what we as a company exist to achieve. Looks easy. But what I have found from working with literally thousands and thousands of managers like you is, let me tell you about an experience with this. We do a Nike case, and every year they fall into the same trap. And they start talking about Nike and say, hey, you know, Nike's a really authentic company. I say, yeah. Is that important? Oh, yes, it's really important to be authentic. And I say, and what's the purpose of Nike? And they know that. They've read a case. They've read 4 pages on it. They know what Nike's purpose is, and they can talk about it. Is purpose important? Oh, yes, purpose is important. But think about it. Do you really know? What is the purpose of your organization? And then press yourself like we were pressing your answer, that go beyond the obvious, right? Or do you sound like everybody else in your business, that you're doing the same thing they are, right? For the same group of customers. So why does the world need your business? Why does it need your organization? And it's with that question strategy begins. Here's a little test. And this is where I need to know that you're alive. We've chosen to side with the many, not the few. Our concept is to offer customers an extensive range of practical, well-designed furnishings at low prices. And by doing this, we will give people a better everyday life. Any idea? Who? Think about that. It's 2 lines. 2 lines. And do you notice they didn't say, hey, we're a furniture company and we hawk furniture at cheap prices, right? They didn't say that. It's a very specific example so that you and every other audience I've spoken to around the world knows who this is. They don't just say they're in engineering services. They say, we're a particular furniture company, and this is what makes us particular. And you got it. That's who it is. It's IKEA. 2 lines. Everybody in this room knew who that was. Who's this? Our company is built upon finding ways to do online search better and faster. You didn't even let me finish it. You've only heard 6 words. In an increasing number of new places and in ever more efficient ways. Who's this? Yeah. Think about, if we had more time, I'd ask you to take out a piece of paper and write down the 1 sentence. Write down the sentence that really captures who you are. To bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world, providing performance opportunities for those who could benefit, and offering empowering, inspirational messages for those who would listen. You got it. Nike. All around the world, they know it's Nike. We educate leaders who make a difference in the world. Yeah, but let me tell you, there's something I really love about this purpose statement. And it's not the beginning, it's near the end. It says, for nearly a century, our faculty have drawn on their passion for teaching, their experience in working with organizations worldwide, and the insights gained from their research to educate generations of leaders who have shaped the practice of business in every industry and in every country around the world. The reason I love this purpose statement is it leaves the faculty off the hook. And basically what it says is we succeed when our graduates succeed. Because you notice it doesn't say I have anything to do with shaping the practice of business in every industry and every country around the world. It says generations of our graduates do that. And so I have to true up here and have to tell you that when we go around the world, we talk about Jim Wally and say, he's ours. But I have to own up and admit that first he was yours. And we know that roots really are what matter the most. So thank you for sending him to us secondhand. But that's really what it's about. It's what our clients, our customers, it's ultimately the value that we create for our customers. And it's the same for you. It's the value that you create for your customers so they can do what they need to do better. So there we are. So this is really what it's about. It's not about the Harvard Business School. It's not about IKEA or Google or Nike. It's really about your business. It's really to get you to think about what's the purpose of your business, who are you, and why do you matter? Guy Kawasaki says it this way. He says, make meaning, then make money. And when I think about this, when I think of making meaning, I don't mean it just in a philosophical, emotional sense. I mean it in a nuts and bolts, cold-hearted economic sense. You as a player, if you're in a nonprofit company, you're competing with all kinds of other nonprofits for resources, for opportunities to make a difference. What you have to think about is why, as a player in that market, do you really bring something that wouldn't be there without you? What is that? And why is it that that matters? So make meaning and then go on to turn it to money. You know, we spent a lot of our time talking about purpose because, as I said, that's where strategy starts. It's not where strategy ends. It's just where it starts. It's a way to stake a claim. It's to say, this is who we're going to be. And if you play poker, how many of you play poker? Do you know? Poker? I know you play slots, but do you play poker? Right? So it's like the ante of the game. To earn the right to sit at the table, you need to have clarity of purpose. But it just gives you the right to have a seat at the table. But winning takes a lot more. Because a purpose is just an idea, right? And ideas can be copied, right? You say, hey, here's my great idea. Oh, I think I'll do that too, right? It's easy to copy. It's just an idea. So how do you take that idea and really make it into a competitive advantage? So that's what I want to talk about now. To do this, I like to talk about Gucci. And not because only they have great handbags and, you know, sexy fashion and all of that, but because it was one of the most fabulous turnarounds in the history of business. And we're going to start at the bottom here. And that's in 1992. Gucci lost 50 million on sales of 200 million. Think about that. That's hard to do. 50 million on sales of 200 million. And the grandson of the founder, Maurizio Gucci, was the CEO at the time. And his dream of restoring the fashion house to basically the pinnacle of the industry had come to an abrupt halt. And he was canned in the process. What happened was sales were plummeting, the customers were indifferent, and internally the company was in a complete set of paralysis. And Investcorp, who was the private equity company behind Gucci, one of their managers said, you know, all the banks really love Maurizio. It was a really wonderful vision. Yet there was no consolidated statements, no definitive central management team, no business model. Not by dreams alone, not by purpose alone. Maurizio had a great purpose, but that's all he had. And Investcorp said, we want out. We want to sell this company. They got rid of Maurizio first, then they wanted to sell the company, and they tried to sell it for $50 million. $500 million, and had no takers. Nobody anywhere in the world was willing to pay $500 million for Gucci. And so they said, look, you know, let's dust it up and take it public, right? We want our money out, and the only way we can get our money out is to take this thing public. So they got a new CEO, a guy named Domenico De Sole, and he came in, and this is what the industry looked at like at the time. At the very peak, this is what we call the productivity frontier that goes down the right-hand side. They're the best-in-class firms in the industry. The combination of willingness to pay and the relative cost position of the firms. So those that are on the frontier are best in class. So way up at the top you have Hermes, which is where Gucci started out. Very high customer willingness to pay and high relative costs, but they were able to recoup those costs and the willingness to pay. And then all the way down to someone like Ralph Lauren, which is also very good at what it does. It's doing something different. The idea is that everyone along this frontier is doing something different. Their strategies are different. So that's where we started, and the company had crashed down through excessive licensing. There were 22,000 Gucci products, including Gucci scotch, Gucci matches, Gucci tennis balls, and Gucci coochie bags, right? 22,000 products, the brand was trashed, the willingness to pay was in the toilet. Maurizio came in at that point and he said, I'm going back to the top. I'm going to restore the glory of the Gucci company. And if you think about how often is in a turnaround situation, your impulse is go back, claim the hill, go back to who we were. And that's what he wanted to do. So he's heading from the bottom right back up to the top left immediately. And this is instead what happened, was he succeeded in increasing the relative cost position, but didn't move the willingness to pay. And they were way off the frontier and on the verge of bankruptcy. They brought in a new leader, and he didn't start with the instinct that we need to go back to who we were. He said we need to figure out who we're going to be. And let's take a clean sheet of paper and think afresh. What he said was, let's go there. Let's be a company that's known for fashion-forward, high quality, and get this, good value. Now I know some of the men in the audience, if their wives came home with these goods, might say, good value? Are you kidding me? But they meant it. Good value in the designer fashion world. That's who Gucci was going to be. So he had that clarity. He understood what they were bringing to the market. And then what he did was he built a whole system of value creation that was based on that purpose, that brought that purpose to life. You can look around every single one of these elements, and what you found is that they remade every part of the company. One of them was design. They had two designers they could choose from. One named Tom Ford was a commercial designer, and he cared a lot about the commercial aspects of the products. He was also extremely good looking. And what they decided to do, I say, Domenico, let's get real. You're telling me you picked Tom Ford because he's good looking? He said, yes, yes. I wanted to make Ford a star because I needed to jolt the customer. I needed to jolt the world to realize this is a new Gucci. So it was a very risky play, but he did it because the company was in desperate throes. You look what happened with prices, 30% overnight. He reduced prices 30%. I said, hey, Domenico, wasn't that a risky thing to do? He said, no, not doing it would have been risky because given who we wanted to be, I had to do this. I had to send a very strong signal. They changed over their customer group from women like me to a lot of women like you in the audience. They said, we're going to go for a younger crowd, and we're going to do it because they buy more often. They buy 4 times a year versus the classic style, which is once a year. So they changed their customers. They let their customers go and brought in new ones. So basically, every single aspect, every activity in the company was changed over to bring it in alignment with the new purpose. $8 billion was what they got when they took it public for a company that 500 million was out of reach just 5 years earlier, right? But he remade the whole company by starting with a new purpose, by building an incredible system of value creation designed to deliver exactly what was in the core. So here he is. He says, you know, some companies have great strategies and they do a lot of talking, but they don't get it done. I follow through. And if any of you have been in those kinds of discussions that say, what's more important, strategy or execution? Just look those people in the eye and say, you got to be kidding. You need a great strategy and you need a great execution. And if you think about strategy like this, as a whole system of advantage, what you see is that strategy is not just an idea. It's a set of interconnected activities that are directed toward one whole, toward one purpose, right? So this is how you connect an idea with a reality of being something in particular and doing that something in particular particularly well. So this is how we link ideas and action. So when you came in, you probably thought strategy was all about thinking great thoughts. I don't think so. As a leader, in the leader's hands, I think strategy is about setting an agenda and building an awesome organization to carry it out. And you tailor the organization, you tailor it to do exactly what it is you're promising to deliver. It's how you deliver on that promise. So here, I gave you a blank copy. Fill it in, right? You've got to start with what is that distinctive purpose that's in the center. And then think about all of the activities that your organization does. And how do they align? And how do they row in the same direction? And how do they support that purpose? And notice at the top, I call it the animating force of a company. And this is, again, going from, it's just an austere idea that's in some office someplace. That strategy should be, and I really believe this, it should be the lifeblood of your company. It should be the energy that pulses through, that tells everybody in the company how what they do matters, how what they do is connected to a purpose that is sitting on top of everything that happens in the company. It's the animating force, the energy in a company. So a compelling purpose backed by a system of advantage gives you a difference that matters. It means that if you disappear, there will be a hole in the world of those you serve. Somebody came up to me once and said, afterward, politely, didn't say it during the talk, he came up afterward and he said, Cynthia, I don't really think we're changing the world. And I said, well, where's your business? And he said, well, it's in Ohio. And I said, well, where's that? Isn't that in the world? Right? You don't need to change the whole wide world. You have to matter to the people you serve. So if you do disappear, that there would be a hole. And frankly, if you don't have that difference, nobody will mourn your organization if it's gone. And think about it. If they wouldn't miss you then, how much do they really need you now? So, what's it all about? What are you really trying to achieve by having this purpose, by having this system of advantage? Is it a long-run sustainable competitive advantage that accumulates such a powerful lead that no one can catch up? Is that what it really takes for an organization to endure? Is that a realistic aspiration for those who are leading an organization? And when I talk about this, I like to talk about these guys. This is Apple's annual report, the first annual report they ever filed in 1980. And here we have Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak with the shades on the right. They said, bringing technology to individuals, we believe, is the extraordinary business of this decade. And that's what we're going to do as Apple Computer, bring technology to individuals. And they really did have a difference that mattered. They were very user-friendly, they were plug and play. They had the first electronic software calculator that really set them apart from any other players in the market. They were the most profitable company in the PC industry with the #1 market share worldwide. They really had a difference that mattered. But what happened was, as they developed products that were greater and greater, but incompatible with the rest of the world, and very high priced. This is the Lisa computer. It was insanely great, but insanely unsellable technology. And this is one of their own guys said, you know, hey, the Lisa, it was a great machine. We just couldn't sell any. If you invested $100,000 in 1991, by 1997, that would have been worth $23,000. This is the point when Steve Jobs was brought back to the company. And Michael Dell was asked at the time, what would you do if you were Steve Jobs? And he said, I'd close it down and give the money back to the shareholders. Right? This is Apple on the verge of bankruptcy. What can you all learn from Apple's experience? There are some things that are really particular to the PC industry, and we won't go into those. But there's something that all of us as strategists can learn from looking what happened to Apple. And that's the evanescence of a difference that matters. Whatever constitutes strategic advantage in your company will change. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. What does endure is the ongoing need to add value, the ongoing need to guide and develop your organization so it continues to matter, so it continues to be relevant. This is about forward motion. This is not about stasis. This is not solve the strategy problem, crack the case, and sail on forever with a long-run, sustainable competitive advantage. This is a leader whose responsibility is to make sure the company matters now, and to set the company up so it will matter tomorrow. That's what endures. It's not any one strategy, any one competitive advantage. It's the constant need to matter, the constant need to be relevant. Picasso got it right. He said, success is dangerous. One begins to copy oneself, and to copy oneself is more dangerous than to copy others. It leads to sterility. So, in the past 25 years, thousands of articles and books, literally, have been written about strategy. But virtually nothing had been written about the strategist, or what it means to take on this role for a company. But you know, owning these questions that are at the very core of what an organization is and why it matters are really the heart of leadership. So I'm going to close by talking about being a strategist, taking up this role and living the questions in your company. This is from Stephen Covey's work on the 7 habits of highly effective people. And what you know is, a lot of people talk about, for most leaders, finding time to address strategy is a constant challenge. And this is, what he shows you is that the urgent drives out the importance in many of our lives. And what you see is that you attend to the urgent things that are important, like crises and deadline-driven projects. You also do some things that are urgent, but face it, they're not very important, like day-to-day interruptions, day-to-day demands. And you also, frankly, we all do a lot of things that are neither important nor urgent: email, trivia, busy work. But what oftentimes gets left are the things in the upper right-hand quadrant, the things that are very important, but they're not urgent. They're not in your face. And a lot of people say that's why companies are slow to embrace strategy, because leaders don't have the time. The urgent activities drive it out. But I've come to believe that there's a deeper reason a lot of leaders and organizations don't fully engage with strategy. And that's because they're comfortable with the way things are. Even if they're not scintillating, they're comfortable. Schumpeter, a great economist, said that for an economy to flourish, there have to be leaders who are willing to swim against the stream. And he said the whole difference lies there, between those who are content with things the way they are and those who want to build anew. He called these people, he described them as mandertot. It's man of action. Now we call those people entrepreneurs. And what we know is that strategy doesn't start with a consultant. It doesn't start with an analyst. It starts with a leader. Behind every pulsating, vibrant organization that I've seen anywhere in the world is a leader who sees the initiative and made it happen. I'm on several boards of directors. I care deeply about strategy. And I can tell you that if it doesn't come from the CEO, if it doesn't come from the leader, it doesn't come. You need the courage to choose. As individuals in our own lives, the most powerful weapon we have to form our identity are the choices that we make. And the same is true for an organization. An organization's identity, its meaning, its real significance has to be made. As leaders, it's yours to create. The existentialists talked about this a long time ago. They said existence may be given, but essence never is. Essence is something that has to be made. Sartre said, everything has been figured out except how to live. There's a future to be fashioned. This is where existentialism and strategy come together. It's about creating essence. Contrary to popular views, strategy isn't a question to be solved and settled. It truly is a set of questions to be lived. And when people come to our executive programs, we work on their strategies. I think they go home with something they feel good about. But that's not really the greatest thing they leave with. The greatest thing they leave with is an appreciation for the questions. Because whatever is on the piece of paper when they leave is going to grow old. And understanding the questions and having the courage to move the company forward is what's most vital for them going forward. So just as it's impossible to build watertight ships that withstand all contingencies, you cannot remove ungoverned chance from human life. And the balance in any strategy is a fragile integrity. So here we are back to our guide jobs. This is about rediscovering differences that matter. This is a company that was down in the dump, nearly in Skid Row. And this is where he came out in 2001. Imagine, that's just 11 years ago. And when you see these products, you're going to think they're the Model T, from a century ago. This was just 11 years ago. And he came in, and the reason I'm showing you this is to see that he actually developed his strategy and then lived it forward. He didn't look at what happened in 2012 and go back and make up a strategy, post hoc. So just look at what he said he was going to do.
We're just getting started. I'd like to tell you where we're going. What is our vision? A lot of people have come to ask that of our whole industry the last few months. What is our vision? This is what everybody else is telling us. That our PC is waning, if not a hole being dug. One of the smartest journalists in our business is a guy named Walt Mossberg, somebody I admire, because he cares about the same things we do. And even Walt, a few weeks ago, said, the PC, which has carried the digital revolution for 24 years, has matured into something boring. That hurt. But Walt's really smart, and we listen to him very carefully. Mike Capellas, who runs Compaq, we don't think of it in terms of the PC business anymore. And Jeff Weitzen, who runs Gateway, we're clearly migrating away from the PC as the centerpiece. This is where this comes from. A lot of people wondering what the future of the PC is. We don't think the PC is dying at all. We don't think the PC is moving away from the center at all. We think it's evolving, just like it has since it was invented in 1975 and 6. In the early years, nobody knew what this thing was going to do. These were the prehistoric era. But right around 1980, the PC entered what was to become its first golden age, and that was the age of productivity. With the invention of the personal computer spreadsheet and word processors, followed up a few years later in Apple's case by desktop publishing, the golden age of productivity had begun, and it lasted almost a decade and a half, driving this industry. The last few years, though, of that golden age, things started to flatten out. People started to wonder, is the PC waning? Have we solved all the problems that need to be solved with a PC? But right around the mid-90s, we entered the second golden age of the PC. And that, of course, was the age of the Internet. Now, we didn't throw out our productivity, we kept using it. But we added to it this exciting new thing called the Internet. And the Internet propelled the PC both in business and personal uses to new highs. And it's been amazing what's happened with the Internet. But now, as the Internet has matured, people are again asking, is the PC waning? What's going to happen to the PC? We think the PC is on the threshold of entering its third great age. And that age is the age of digital lifestyle. And that's being driven by an explosion of new digital devices. We have cell phones everywhere. We have portable music players, CDs, and their cousins, the new solid-state MP3 players now, everywhere. We have digital camcorders everywhere. We have DVD players exploding in consumers' homes and in business as well, even portable DVD players. Digital cameras now constitute 15% of all cameras sold in the U.S. 15%. It'll be 50% in a few years. And handheld organizers are everywhere as well. We are living in a new digital lifestyle with an explosion of digital devices. It's huge. And we believe the PC, or more importantly the Mac, can become the digital hub of our new emerging digital lifestyle, with the ability to add tremendous value to these other digital devices. Digital hub, key phrase.
It's 2001, a new purpose. Look at the words and how they talk about what we were talking about all afternoon. If there ever was a product that catalyzed what's Apple's reason for being, it's this. It combines Apple's incredible technology base with Apple's legendary ease of use, with Apple's awesome design. Those three things come together in this, and it's like, that's what we do. So if anybody was ever wondering, why is Apple on Earth? I would hold this up as a good example. And here's the stock price that goes with it, right? A new purpose, a new reason to matter. And halfway through this journey, Apple Computer changed its name. It's now simply known as Apple Inc. For in the end, it is important to remember that we cannot become what we need to be by remaining what we are. So here's the new way of thinking. Strategy's the primary objective is not just about beating the competition, it's about meeting unmet needs. Think Steve Jobs. The skill set is not just a left brain analytical exercise, it's about the whole brain, the left brain and the right brain. Analysis, creativity, thinking, feeling. The aspiration is not a long-run sustainable competitive advantage, any one advantage. It's about an organization that continues to matter. And the process is not just the annual strategic plan. It's an ongoing, continuous process. And what I've learned from working with thousands of managers is that you don't need to be Steve Jobs to feel great about the organization that you've built. So I want to close by asking you not what would the world be like with and without your organization, but I want you to think about what your organization would be like with and without a strategist. What if nobody rose to the challenge? What if nobody stood up and said, I'll take the responsibility for these questions? What if nobody weighed the options and chose what the organization would be, to whom it would matter, and why? Because if you don't make these choices, you end up somewhere in the middle, an indistinct as opposed to a distinct place. And if the core of that strategy wheel is indistinct, think about how it reverberates throughout the whole model. If it's indistinct and fuzzy and blurry and insignificant in the middle, you bet it'll be that way around the whole model. What if nobody helped to build a system of advantage or value creation that enabled your organization to do something in particular, particularly well? And what if nobody watched over the organization and kept it vibrant and moved it ahead? Think about it. Would you want to work for a company like this? Would you want to be a customer of a company like this? think we know what the answer to that question is. So here are some of them, doing their thing around the world. We have, Indian food, we have architects, we have an in vitro fertilization clinic, a women's clothing store, and automotive paints. They all need a reason to matter. And it all starts with you. So, thank you very much, and I hope you love the questions. Not just live them, but love them. Because I think it's the most significant opportunity a leader has to really make a consequential difference to the life of a business and to everyone who works in it.
I've just finished reading the book by Steve Jobs, and interesting that you finished your talk with that.
Yeah.
Very much an autocrat, a very difficult man to work with. He did something with the iPhone that was something most businesses I don't think would do. He created something that was competitive to a product that was very successful, the iPod.
Yeah.
In your experience, how many companies have done something like that?
I think I agree with you. I think it was quite unusual. And beyond that, I think what you could look is that what connects them are, if you think about it as a whole ecology, a whole system, if you look at the importance of apps and how the apps connect all across the products, and so if you look at the iTunes, you look at apps, you look at not only the range of products, but how they go to market. So it's a whole system. It's a system that goes beyond any one of the products. And I think it's really that system that has kept moving the company forward. So it's no one product, right? And they kept cannibalizing themselves. So it's, I think looking at the connections across the products is a really good thing to do.
I was very interested when you talked about leadership from the top down.
Yeah.
And I wanted just to pose to you a question around culture in relation to leadership, which then also filters through from a strategy perspective, because how can you execute that strategy if the culture of the organisation is not spot on with what you're thinking from a leader's perspective? I wonder if you could make a comment on that.
Culture is incredibly, incredibly important. But a culture to do what? And so if you think about all of your businesses, having the same culture in all of them doesn't make sense. Cultures differ by what you're trying to do. They differ by what your purpose is. And so that what's really important, it's interesting, we've talked a lot about strategy in the head. You've got to think about the heart side of it as well, and you've got to think about what it is that connects what you do every day to the purpose of the company. And so you need to be able to connect the dots between when you go to work in the morning, what you think you're doing, what you think you're contributing to, and what it is that the organization's trying to do. If you don't know what the organization's trying to do, you don't know what you're supposed to do either, and you don't know why it matters. And that's where culture is really important. But it can't be just any culture. It has to be a culture that really fits and reinforces and is vibrant with what you're trying to do. But what you've got to do as a maker of meaning is that when everybody comes in, they need to know why what they do matters. And if you don't, as a leader, if you don't really have clarity about why your business matters, they don't have clarity about what they do and why it matters. So it's all a system, it all comes together, and culture is enormously important.
Our guest that mentioned his long-range sustainable competitive advantage happens to be, and he might want to comment, happens to be from a multi-generation family-owned and managed business. I'm wondering about your experience in terms of that group. It's not a sector because it's not homogenous. Wondering about your experience in your research in terms of where renewal is possible from transition, etc., within that.
We've had a lot of people from family businesses at the school over the years, and oftentimes the story is not the happy one that we have at the table here. What we have is that oftentimes we see companies that have run their course, and what successive generations have done is help ride that down. And that what you need to do, you might have inherited a great company, but what you have to do is you have to make sure it matters now. And so that your job as a leader in a family company is to help it endure, to help it continue to matter. And oftentimes that's not just doing what it was doing in the past. Think Gucci, right? And this whole idea of clinging to the past and who they were, it wasn't the right thing for Gucci at some point in time. And so these questions are every bit as vitally important in a family business, and to make sure that it continues to endure. So it's, as I said, I've had the opportunity, but I have to tell you, I feel it's a heavier opportunity than we see in a lot of publicly held companies, because it's not only the business that's riding on the decisions, it's the family, and it's up close and personal in your face. And I'll just tell you one other thing. Do you know what happened to Maurizio Gucci? So those of you in the audience who are from public companies thinking, yeah, family business, wouldn't I love to be part of a great family business? Well, not only did he get fired, remember Steve Jobs also got fired from the company that he had founded, but Maurizio got fired too. And the next thing that happened was he got murdered by a gunman that was hired by his ex-wife. Family businesses are tricky.